Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the debut episode of What You Call It podcast. I'm your host, GB. Now, the wrestler that I'm interviewing today is a man with two hands that has a fighting chance. He beat AJ Styles not once, not twice, but three times on national television. He's appeared on WrestleMania, Royal Rumbles, you name it, he's been there. It's none other than James Ellsworth. How are you doing today, mate?
I'm good, man. I'm your first guest. We're starting this podcast all with a bang.
Definitely, man. I'm, I think it's an absolute pleasure to have you as my first guest. And, you're sort of well known. But before we talk about what made you a superstar, let's rewind the clocks a little bit. Let's go back to the beginning and let's know what made you a wrestling fan.
Man, I've been watching wrestling since I was 4 or 5 years old, since I can remember. I can't remember not watching wrestling. But in the late 80s, man, I'd turn on the TV, see the Ultimate Warrior, a larger-than-life cartoon character. Then I would turn to another channel and see Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, the Rock and Roll Express, who are just, gritty, like cool-looking wrestlers. So I was just into it all, man. But those are the first wrestlers I remember seeing is the Ultimate Warrior and Ricky Morton.
No, that's cool, man. And as you sort of became a fan of wrestling, what actually made you want to become a wrestler?
It's kind of the same answer. I can't remember not wanting to be a wrestler. I remember in like first or second grade, all the kids had to dress up of what they wanted to be when they grew up. And my dad was like, "Oh, don't you like baseball? We'll put you in your baseball uniform," because I played Little League baseball. And I said, "No." I said, "Let me wear, a wrestling costume." He's like, "Well, where would we get a wrestling costume? And why would you want to be a wrestler?" And I remember saying, "I don't know. It looks fun. It looks, and I'm like 6 or 7 years old at this point. And we had to go out and just like put together a crappy looking wrestling costume. And I went to school and said, I want to be a wrestler. And everybody's kind of looking at me weird. You're first or second grade, like, okay. And all the other kids are dressed up as firefighters, police officers, doctors, stuff like that. And I'm sitting there in my made wrestling gear, wanting to be a wrestler.
No, that's cool, man. So, obviously, you became a fan of wrestling. You actually sort of went out to become a wrestler. Can you tell us more about how you discovered Axl Rotten School?
So, when I graduated high school, I was 17 years old, very young, and I was going to independent wrestling shows since I was 15, just kind of watching the shows. And, they would always have a table set up for the wrestling school. Mm-hmm. And I would always tell them for 2 years, hey, when I graduate, I'm going to sign up. When I graduate, I'm going to sign up. And they're like, okay. So when I graduated, 4 days later, when the first day the wrestling school was open that week, I went and signed up. And they were like, oh, man, you've been telling us for 2 years you're going to sign up. And you finally did. And I was like, well, I told you guys I'd graduate high school. And Axl wasn't a part of my training at first in the school, although he had a hand in the training at the school. It wasn't until later on, after I graduated from that school, that I found Axl Rotten, and he trained me before shows. I would go on car rides with him. I would go to other wrestling schools with him and train, and I learned so much from him. I learned more from him than I did anybody else, and that's why I give him a lot of the credit. Yeah. Because he really, like, the wrestling school I went to, it was pretty decent, man. It was pretty traditional, basic wrestling school. They taught me all the basics, how to hit the ropes, how to bump, how to conduct myself, and they did a good job at it. But it wasn't until I met Axl that I really started understanding and getting the psychology and the art form of professional wrestling, and I owe a lot of that to him.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And just as you were saying, you discovered Axl Rotten School. I just want to know, because after that, you would actually go into the independent circuit. Jimmy Dream was your independent name. Can you just tell us how actually you came up with that name, and what was it like being on the independent scene?
Well, at first, I didn't really have much of a gimmick. I was just, like you said, Jimmy Dream. James is my real first name, so my nickname's Jimmy, and then wrestling was my dream. So I wanted to go with that. I wanted to, I had like a dream catcher on my tights, and Jimmy Dream is a kid named Jimmy chasing his dream was the gimmick. And it was, and nobody really understood it, but to me, it was cool. I was like, okay, my finisher was called the Dream Catcher, and I'm just chasing my dream. I'm just running through the independents, chasing my dream. And like, you know, for me, it was cool. And, you know, people I would explain it to would think it was cool, but that was the issue with me. I had to explain it to people. And any gimmick that you have to explain to people is not a good gimmick. They need to understand what it is right away. And so later on, I became pretty Jimmy Dream, where I had long hair and I'm wearing mascara and fishnets and pink and bright colors and purple. And people understood that right away. There's a guy that thinks he's pretty. This, you know, he thinks he's a pretty man, and he's not. And so they understood that right away once I added the pretty to it.
Did you so independents were sort of known as well, where you would maybe have a lot of former WWF stars coming to the shows. Was there any sort of special names or anyone that sort of stands out to you that gave you some good advice, or any experiences that, you know, you sort of taken with you along the road?
Well, yeah, I like early on in my career, I wrote shows with Tatanka, and he was always giving good advice. He would come in once a month. I live in Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, and we would go to West Virginia for Comfy Pro, and Tatanka, they were using him like every month. So they'd fly him into Baltimore, and I'd pick him up from the airport, my buddy Adam and I, and we would ride with him. I remember picking his brain on those trips, and he would give me great advice. And RVD, I met. It's so crazy. WWE had a show here where I live, and I ran into RVD after the show outside, and I said, "Hey, Rob, I'm in wrestling. I'm in the independents. Any advice?" He said, "You need to find something that you're better than everybody else, and you take that and you run with it." And that's all he said. And I, to this day, I just remember him saying that, and I was like, what am I good at that nobody, like, that I can be better than everybody else at? I was like, I'm small. I'm not really, I'm athletic, but not crazy athletic. I don't really have the look. So I was just trying to find, what am I, and man, it was the storytelling and the charisma and the talking. That's my niche. That's what I'm good at. That's what Axl Rotten always told me I was good at. He's like, you're a good storyteller. You're good at promos. He's like, you need to really, you know, focus on your strengths and hide your weaknesses. He's like, your weaknesses are you're small, you don't look like you belong on GQ magazine, like you're not going to do 450s and moonsaults, even though you can. I never wanted to do those type of moves because I didn't want to blow out my knees or get injured a lot, and not for what, I've never been injured a lot. So I had to focus on being charismatic, my characterization, and my verbal skills to carry me. And that, like, I remember RVD telling me that. Then, man, I like became cool with Shane Douglas, and he was always willing to give advice. And Teddy Long, to this day, Teddy Long is one of my best friends. I met him on the independents before I ever made it to WWE, and I just talked to him yesterday. We're really good friends. And man, he always gave me blatant, real advice. Like, a lot of the guys will be nice and just, you know, say what you want to hear or whatever.
But he was quite blunt,
and
sort of, but in a good way.
Always, oh man, in a good way. Always real, always. And I appreciated that so much. And to this day, like I said, he's a really good friend of mine. And man, when I made it, he called me and congratulated me and said, man, he's like, man, I ain't surprised. Play all that charisma you got. You know, like, and he always told me, it was kind of the same advice Axl gave me. Focus on, you know, your strengths and hide your weaknesses. And if you have a lot of weaknesses, but you have some strengths, you can use those strengths to your advantage. And that's, you know, that's the best advice I could give anybody. And I always tell everybody getting in the business, because that was a good question you asked, like, you know, on independent shows, running into these former WWE wrestlers and legends and all that. Yeah. When you're on indie shows, find these guys, talk to these guys. If you're starting out, you're going to a training school, go to a school where the people that are training wrestlers are people that made it in the business and made money and made a living and traveled the world. Find those guys, because like I said, I went to a decent wrestling school, but I didn't understand any of it until I was around Axl, who traveled the world, worked for one of the big companies. I made a living off of wrestling, and that's the best advice I give to people getting into the business is, you know, pick those legends' brains and find a school to where the guys that are training people have been there and done it in the business.
No, that's awesome, man. Because I feel like unless you ask, you don't know. And you know, you've done it yourself, and obviously you made a friendship out of it as well, especially like Teddy Long. Have you ever thought about opening your own wrestling school?
You know, I have. When I really started looking for buildings to do it in and all, that this thing called the pandemic started.
Yeah. Oh, mate, tell me about it. It's just ruined everything, hasn't it?
And yeah, and I was like, well, there goes that for now. But I do feel like in the future I will, because it's something that I know I can do well, and I think I'd be good at, and I'd have a lot of fun at. So that's what life's about to me, is fun. So if I could do something fun where I'm teaching people and helping people, I'm all for it. I do. My friend that lives like 25, 30 minutes from me. He has a ring at his house. And I am training one guy right now, Big Trouble Ben Bishop. If you want to look him up on Twitter, he's 7 foot tall, 275 pounds, just big, good looking guy. You know, like I think he has a lot of potential to get signed to WWE one day. So I'm focusing on him a lot, helping him out. I'm actually going to train him tomorrow. So I do right now. He's my one and only student, and but I do enjoy it, taking him on the car rides and taking him to the shows, getting them booked like Axl used to do with me.
No, that's awesome, man. I'll keep an eye out for him, and I think I'll look forward to the future on WWE TV, trained by James Ellsworth. It'll be a pretty good reaction, and just to hear the commentators putting it over, that'd be awesome, man. Just before we talk about your debut in the WWE official, because the reason why I say official is a lot of people may forget is he was actually a Rosebud with Adam Rose. Can you tell us more about that? How did you get the gig? Was it because it was in your hometown, or you knew someone, or?
So yeah, like wrestling's political like everything else, but like when WWE comes to your city, you know, before the pandemic, they use indie guys as extras, and extra means you're in the background. You're not, you know, you're there to either be a security guard, a referee, not a referee, security guard, a rosebud, because a referee is a very important real job. Yeah. You could be a doctor, you could be a wrestler that gets beat up by one of their guys, whatever role they need you in that day. And all you do is you email them, send them pictures, and send them video, and whenever they come to your town or near your town, 250 miles or less, they would use you. And so anytime they came near my town, I would contact them. And my friend Derek, who referees there, would help me get booked as well. And yeah, like the Rosebud, that's just what they needed, that loop. So I got to do that. That was my first time walking in front of the WWE crowd. I had my little cheeseburger outfit on.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I remember seeing a crowd, and I remember going, I want this every day. This is what I want. I remember seeing that crowd, walking through the Gorilla for the first time and seeing that crowd. I was like, this is what I want every single day. And I'll never forget that. And I mean, it was like a year and a half later, I got it every single day. Awesome.
So you got just a little bit of taste of it, what it's like, and then it happens. Mm-hmm. You get the opportunity. You get the opportunity to face Braun Strowman on Monday Night Raw, and it was on July 25th, 2016. And the reason why I remember that sort of that day, well, the debut of you and that moment in the match, is because you stood out like a sore thumb. Can you please tell me what is it like? How did it happen? And did you know that something special had happened? Did you know that you became sort of very popular and famous, or was it just a while?
Well, man, it was so nuts. So Arn Anderson picked me for the spot because he had me throw a punch, because whoever had the spot was going to throw 2 punches on Braun Strowman. He see me throw a punch, and I was the smallest guy there. So I threw a good punch. He pulled me in the ring. He said, let me see you throw a punch on Strowman now. So I threw a punch, and he really liked my punches, which meant a lot, because I have the utmost respect for Arn Anderson. And as I should, and as everyone in the wrestling business should. 100%. But yeah, so that's how I got the spot. My daughter's saying hi.
Hi, you're right.
Work probably.
Who's that random man?
Oh yeah, I'm just a dad, a blue collar man here. And my daughter she loves me. She's always around me.
Just a sidetrack. What was it like for your daughter, and just to see you on TV, and just to, I assume that she has the action figure of you as well. What was that like for you as a father?
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome, man. I have 2 daughters. She's the youngest. She'll be 6 in a couple of weeks, and then I have a older daughter that'll be 9 years soon. The oldest one remembers it all. This one, will ask me to put on WWE Network every day and try to watch something of me. And I told her, I said, I don't want to watch me every day, but she wants to do it. So it is cool, man. Like, when they get older, they realize that, you know, it's not normal for their dad to have action figures and T-shirts and have been on national television.
Yeah.
That's not a normal thing. You know, I think they'll understand it more, and it's like, wow, Dad, that's awesome, you know. But yeah, like, back to the Strowman thing, I knew when I did the promo, I was like, man, I think I did a good job at the Any Man with Two Hands Has a Fighting Chance line that I just came up with on the spot. I was like, man, I felt like it sounded good. And then once Braun Strowman obliterated me, and, you know, it was very painful. And, you know, once I kind of regained my, I don't want to say consciousness because I wasn't unconscious, but regained my composure. And Vince McMahon right away said, hey, good job, pal. I'm going to hire you. I'll be in touch. I was like, then right there at that moment, I felt like I had something.
Oh, just literally. So I didn't realize it was that soon. Like, literally after that, that's just, I think it's something you can dream of.
Right after the match. It wasn't. Oh man, I kept it cool while the remainder of the night. But once I got my hotel room by myself, I just bawled like, oh my God, this man told me he's gonna hire me. And then, like, I didn't hear from him for 6 weeks. I was like, oh man, he forgot about me. Then he called me 6 weeks later. Hey pal, you ready to come to TV? Like, you know, how'd he get my number? What? And he just saw something in me, man. You know, and he likes me in smaller doses. You know, I was there 2016, 2017, gone for a little while. He brought me back in 2018 for a little while. And I'm sure at some point he'll bring me back again because he just sees me as a character that comes back in small doses, which, you know, I don't mind. I'm not the average guy there, 6'2", 220 pounds. So I'm, you know, and looks like he belongs with GQ magazine, the average guy there. And I'm not that guy, but I do appreciate the spot he gave me and has given me.
I do hope we see that, to be honest, because I thought you and Carmella like had such a unique chemistry. Like, you couldn't be any more opposite. But, you know, they say opposites attract. But just before we talk about you and Carmella, we have to discuss you being involved with a main event angle, and that's with AJ Styles and Dean Ambrose. And in my opinion, besides Paul Heyman's SmackDown, that was my favorite sort of run of SmackDown, 2016 to 2017. Now, can you please just like explain to anyone that doesn't necessarily understand sort of pro wrestling and what it is that you've achieved, what it meant to you, and what's it like working with these top guys?
Well, I mean, for me to have a WWE title match as the main event on SmackDown against the best wrestler in the world and watching the referee hoist the title and the whole crowd's chanting your name, like, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, you know, like, and I felt that when I was out there. I felt the reactions. I felt what I was doing, and it meant so much to me, and AJ was so great to work with. And I mean, I don't think that era of SmackDown that involved me and AJ Styles and Dean Ambrose in the main event picture will ever be forgotten. I think that's how compelling the television was. And man, that was the best time of my life professionally, for sure.
Oh, honestly, it was awesome. And I know, like, I'm supposed to be a host, but I'm also a passionate wrestling fan. And for me, it was just so great because I've always had a soft spot for, I won't say jobbers because apparently that's offensive. Damien Demento once went off on one about it. But enhancement talent, I was just like, some of the most famous wrestlers were sort of in that position. Jeff Hardy, you know, someone very well known. But you yourself, to achieve that run and beat AJ Styles sort of 3 times, was it supposed to last as long as it did? Or was it just supposed to be sort of, you know, about a month, a few weeks? Because it did last for a couple of months, that sort of storyline.
Yeah. I think they were just writing it week to week because they didn't knew what they had with me. Like, we did the match with AJ, the first one, and the ratings, the people stayed around. They're like, all right, let's do it again next week. And then the ratings went up, and they just kept, like, the ratings were so good for it, they just kept doing it until it fluttered off. And I don't know. I don't think it was planned for me to wrestle him. You know, I wound up wrestling him 4 times, and I don't think that was the plan. I think it might have been a 2-match plan, but not a 4-match plan. And that angle, like I said, with him and Ambrose and I, it was just, man, it was so cool. And I don't think it was planned that long, but I don't know for sure. I'm just guessing. I think they were like, whoa, we got something here. We got to run with this.
No, I agree. I understand that. So if the ratings are strong, you got to keep with it, really. So let's sort of talk about what I just discussed before the main event angle with AJ and Dean Ambrose, Jon Moxley, in case anyone doesn't know who I'm talking about. Carmella, how did that come up?
That was her idea. She wanted to Vince's office one day and say, hey, I have this idea about Ellsworth being with me and helping me win matches, and I'm kind of manipulating him. And Vince just loved the idea. Like, I have no clue what I would have done in WWE after the Ambrose AJ stuff. I don't know what they had planned, because as soon as Vince heard that idea with Carmella, he just ran with it. And Carmella's had, she's had Big Cat, she had Enzo and Kaz in NXT. She had me, when she first started on SmackDown. Then she had R-Truth, and now she has this guy regional, and I think they're about to end that. Yeah. But what sticks out is her and I. You know what I mean? Like, the R-Truth, the R-Truth stuff doesn't stick out. Enzo and Cass, that was in NXT, so not a lot of people even know about that. And then the regional stuff, I don't think people are going to remember it in a year, because I think he's going to be a good baby face and move on.
Yeah.
But like the stuff with her and I, like you said, we were opposites. She's this beautiful, in shape, gorgeous woman, and like you have this little runt-looking dude, that's trying to be cool, and it's like it worked, man. People, who can't? How many guys out there, always wanted the hot girl, but never could get the hot girl, and I'm that. James Ellsworth was that nerdy little dude that, once the hot girl, would do anything for her, anything to get her. And I think a lot of people understood that. See, like that's what I always say. People got it right away. They understood it.
It was great pairing.
We did 13 months of television together. 11 the first run and 2 months the second run. 13 months of television together. And a lot of television. We're rolling every week, and we're doing cool stuff. And I think people will never forget Carmella and I doing that stuff together, especially with the Money in the Bank thing and all. Like, it's going to be remembered forever as well.
Yeah. I actually was a bit gutted that we never actually got to see you against Daniel Bryan. Would that have been like a dream match for you? Because obviously you two would sort of
they were supposed to butt heads.
Was that, sorry?
Oh man. So at SmackDown 1000, they were supposed to do it. They had it written in, booked. And when I got to the building, they're like, oh, yeah, we're turning Daniel Bryan heel in a few weeks, so we're not doing that match. And they winded up doing, like, Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles against the Usos. I'm like, oh, man, I think people would have really liked me versus Daniel Bryan. And so that was a bummer, really.
Just even if it was for a few minutes, it would have been great TV.
Daniel Bryan's...
Nah, he's awesome.
Oh, man. AJ was supposed to be the special... Yeah, so for that match, AJ was supposed to be the special referee, and if I won, I'd get my job back because Paige had just fired me a few weeks before. So it would have been compelling TV, but, that's showbiz for you. It could change at the last minute. I understand that, and you can't get upset about it forever. I was upset about that for a while. I left the building that time. So upset. But, you got to remember the good times and not the bad, and think, and move on.
Wow, that's awesome, man. I think as well, even with Carmella, the fashion that you were, some of the stuff that you were wearing, the wardrobe, do you still have any of it?
Oh, yeah. I sold some of it, just the stuff I didn't really care for. But the stuff, like, I'll never sell my Money in the Bank outfit. I have my Mella's Money shirt, and I'll never sell that. And, a chain Carmella gave me herself, I'll never sell that. Like, so the stuff that means stuff to me, I kept. The WrestleMania outfit, I'll never sell. Stuff like that. But boots I wrestled for the world title in against AJ, I'll never sell those. So I kept the stuff that means stuff to me. Yeah, something to me.
No, that's cool, man. I know it came to a run, but as you and I are still talking about it to this day, you sort of made a really strong impression, not just myself, but like the internet community. I just want to discuss as well, you challenged for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. What was that like?
Well, dude, it just, I've been gone from WWE for a little bit. I was like, what to do next? And I contacted NWA. I'm like, hey, would you guys want to do anything with me? I think. And they thought about it, and they were like, well, you want to wrestle Nick Aldis for NWA World Title? I think a lot of people will be interested in it. I'm like, heck yeah. I mean, like I said, let's rewind to the beginning of the interview here. Ultimate Warrior was WWE or WWF at the time, and Ricky Morton, who I noticed back, when I was a kid, was NWA. So here I am in 1988 watching the Ultimate Warrior Ricky Morton at 4 years old. Fast forward, I'm here 30 years later. I wrestled for the WWE World Title, and now I'm wrestling for the NWA World Title. The titles those guys wrestled for. It came full circle, man. How many living people in this world? I bet you it's 15 or less can say they've wrestled for both the WWE and NWA World Title. It's got to be 15 or less.
I can't think of many at top of my head, to be honest.
I mean, you got AJ Styles, R-Truth, Ric Flair. Off the top of my head, there's not a lot.
But you are on that list of people that have done that. And you've made an appearance at Bound for Glory as well, wrestling Eli Drake, who's now made his debut in NXT as LA Knight. What was TNA like?
Man, they were nice. I did a loop with them, meaning I did some house shows with them, and I did that pay-per-view. It was fun, man. Great locker room, great group of guys. It's just weird. I was in a weird state then. I didn't know, I felt like WWE was about to sign me again, and then they never did. But I was like, man, but I really enjoyed Impact. Scott D'Amore is a great guy, and it was so fun. The boys were fun. So I had a good time working with them and the NWA, man. I have no complaints about anybody. I work hard for anybody that wants to use me, whether it be an independent wrestling promotion or a televised promotion. I always work hard.
Good, man. Just before we wrap this interview up, I want to ask, what has been your favorite match of your career?
Wrestling AJ Styles for the world title. That one and the match against Strowman, because if it wasn't for the match against Strowman, I would have never been signed to WWE. So that will always be my favorite match.
And the last question that I have is, what would be your Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling?
Mount Rushmore of wrestlers?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Probably Bruno Sammartino, Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and John Cena.
That's a
all
good
the
answer.
top guys. You know what I mean? All the guys that made the most money for the WWE. Yeah.
Nah, that's good, man. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on to the debut episode of What You Call It podcast. I just want to know, what is next for James Ellsworth?
Well, the only thing sure about James Ellsworth right now is nothing's for sure. I feel like eventually I'll be popping back up on your television screen. So just stay tuned.
Good night. Well, thank you very much for joining me on today's episode. And I want everyone to stay safe. And just so you know, there'll be more, and I'll be back.
Thank you, my man.